Point After Podcast with your host, Julien Barnett.
Hey guys, welcome into the Point After Podcast. I'm your host, Julien Barnett. As always, coming to you live from True North Studios and the Great White North. This week, I have Danny Football 59 on. How you doing, man? It's good to have you.
Doing well. Just hyped to be on the podcast, seeing what you're doing over here at the Point After, and glad I can be talking some wide receivers for today.
Yeah, man, it is going to be a blast. We have basically we're going to just break down our favorite top 10, rookie wide receivers coming into this class, and just kind of give you our 2 cents on them. But yeah, let's just kind of get into you real quick. So tell people about what you've been up to. I know you got a lot going on, and you guys got some big news going on over at the Fantasy Stock Exchange. So tell us about that.
Oh yeah, some huge news today. We actually are live. Pre-order is out for our Fantasy Dynasty Dynasty Draft Guide. Sorry, not really well.
You haven't said it enough yet.
You will, but anyways, okay. My brand over at the Fantasy Stock Exchange, or Fantasy Stock X on Twitter, actually just launched the official pre-order form for our upcoming Rookie and Dynasty Draft Guide. Going to our site at fantasystockexchange.com, as you guys can see on the banner coming across the screen, you'll be directed to our homepage with a welcome video that basically just details everything that's going to be on this guide. So make sure once you go on the site, you click that, get all the news, all the updates on what we're going to be including, but it's going to be jam-packed. It's going to be well worth the money. And actually, when you go on the site alone, before even paying for anything, you get access to 2 free articles. One on Travis Etienne, written by my co-host and Corey over at the Fantasy Stock Exchange, and one written by yours truly on Jalen Waddle. So very exciting, very high-profile players that you get free access to just for going onto the site. And you'll get a prompt when you're on the site, $5 off if you enter your email. So currently a $30 guide just for the Dynasty Guide, you'd be able to get for $25. And if you buy the $50 package, that would also include our future July redraft guide release, you'd be getting that for $45. So again, you want to plug how they can really support the Point After podcast in making their draft guide purchase?
Yeah, well, it benefits me because I get a little bit of proceeds from your guys' draft guide, and that's always nice. But really, like it benefits the users, right? There's
for sure.
I just got added to your guys' consensus rankings, and all of I think you have about 12 different guys on there that are that are all contributing. So you really get a pool of knowledge, and any time that you can go and get that vast extensive knowledge is going to be beneficial, especially in Dynasty. So I highly recommend it. I had Tyler Moss on last week, who did a couple of these articles himself, and so him and I are doing the running back breakdown because he's doing the running back breakdown for your articles, and then you and I are doing the wide receiver breakdown because you guys are doing the wide receivers for your articles. So I'm really excited to have you on, and it should be a blast kicking it with you, man.
For sure. Again, I'm mostly writing a lot of those wide receiver articles, so a lot of those you're going to hear about a lot of my thoughts today. Make sure you go read my full thoughts over at that draft guide. Again, if you want to support Julien in the Point After podcast, once you're making your purchase, just click who referenced you, click the Point After, and again, Julien will be receiving his fair share of each purchase. So that being said, make sure you go get that guide now, because again, you can get up to a $15 discount if you're able to get it today. If you get the $50 both guides, well, first of all, you get it for $45 because you get the $5 email promo. And second of all, if you take in each guide's value of $30 alone, that would equate to $60. Well, guess what? You can get it for $45 in this pre-order process. So enough value for you, enough value for us. It's a win-win overall. Make sure you go check it out over at thefantasystockexchange.com.
There you go. You got to market it like you're in a draft.
Oh yeah.
This is where you find your value. So I'm excited to check that out, man, and I'm excited to be on board with it. So, before we jump into the wide receivers, obviously there's some big football stuff going on in the world right now. We're 6 days out from Super Bowl 55. Who do you have winning in this one? We got the Chiefs and the Bucks. Obviously, this is a monumental game for both of these players' careers. I want to hear your thoughts.
So my co-host over at the Fantasy Stock Exchange, and Corey, he's actually an avid Buccaneers fan. I mean, as soon as Brady was signed, he was like, let's go. You know what? Like, yes, Winston was throwing the touchdowns, but this guy just knows how to win. And sure enough, first season over wearing the Peter leads him to the Super Bowl. So he's probably going to want to cover his ears, though, because I have the Chiefs winning this one. And I know it's a -3 spread. I do think that the Chiefs are able to cover that one. Listen, when the Chiefs are playing their game, they can't be stopped. And as good as the Buccaneers secondary is, obviously you got Carlton Davis, Sean Murphy, Bunting, and Jamal Dean back there with Antoine Winfield on your back end. We saw what Tyreek Hill did to them the first time. Carlton Davis is a really good, solid, fundamental corner, but he can't handle with that speed. So I think this could be a high-scoring type affair. I think we could see like a 35-31 type game, to be quite honest. But yeah, I do have the Chiefs coming away with this one.
Yeah, man. I've been on a couple of pods this week, and I've talked about the Super Bowl. I've made my thoughts clear on that one. I have the Chiefs winning as well, and I'm just excited to watch this game. This is going to be, like I said, monumental. If Patrick Mahomes can beat Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, he can start to build a case for himself, as a GOAT, right? Moving into the future. So,
for sure.
Cool, man. And then lastly, before we move on, I just want to quickly give a huge thanks to Monkey Knife Fight for everything that they did with our lip sync knife fight that we had going on over the past 4 weeks. It was just a blast. If you guys haven't seen it, go check it out over on the True North YouTube page. It's you get 4 or 5 of us all lip syncing together. We all got five different songs throughout the whole episode. We play a bunch of the different ones at the entrance. Had submitted throughout the contest, and it was just a lot of fun. And we honestly, we can't thank Monkey Knife Fight enough. They sponsored the whole event. They supplied the prize money as well as merch for all of the contestants. And so definitely go check them out. They are seriously the fastest growing DFS platform on the planet. Like, everybody knows who Monkey Knife Fight is now, and it feels like just last year where I heard of them for the first time. That's really when they started to kick off. So go check them out. You can use promo code TNFF to get matched up to $50 on your first deposit. So definitely take advantage of that, and go check it out because it is a blast
for sure.
All right, man. Let's get into this because we got 10 wide receivers to dive through. I know ours are a little bit different at the back end, but I basically just took the consensus off of fantasypros.com.
Yep.
And then I made a couple of my own adjustments as to who I think should be in the top 10. And so we're just going to kind of go there. So, but with the consensus 101, most people at this point are taking Jamar Chase, LSU wide receiver, 6 foot, 204 pounds. He opted out, obviously, in 2020 because of the COVID pandemic. But in 2019, he played in 14 games, had 84 receptions, 1,700 receiving yards, 20 touchdowns with Joe Burrow. Was just an unstoppable force that year. What do you make of Jamar Chase, and where do you have him on your draft board?
I mean, a lot of the dynasty fantasy football community is probably going to want to cover their ears on this one. But no, he's not my wide receiver 1. He's actually currently my wide receiver 3 right now. And I get it. I get the allure with Jamar Chase. He's a fantastic receiver in his own right. Do not get me wrong. Again, some pros for his game. First of all, he is fantastic he has fantastic verticality and ball skills. I mean, on film, I was mentioning to you before we started this live, but 50-50 balls are more so 80-20 or 70-30 in his favor. It just seems like every time the ball's up in the air, he's coming down with it. So he's very good in that aspect. Again, and once he does come down with it, he's most likely scoring a touchdown, as we saw in 2019. I mean, those 20 touchdowns, a lot of the time, happened on yards after the catch type plays. I mean, this guy was going up and snagging it and still being able to score on those plays. I mean, This is a physical receiver that moves well with the ball in his hands, which you're not really able to say too often. And again, speaking of his hands, he's got strong hands, very adept at snagging these balls outside of his frame. I mean, you see this guy's massive catch radius for a guy who's 6'1", 210 pounds. He plays the game like he's a 6'3", 200-pound type receiver. So those are some pros to his game. But the reason why he kind of lands at wide receiver 3 for me is I think at this point, I don't want to say he's limited as a player, but he hasn't really exhibited that true overall game of the next guy we're going to talk about, who's just struggles at absolutely no aspect of his game. But with Ja'Marr Chase, he really struggles to create consistent separation, in my opinion. Again, he relies mostly on his physicality and those ball skills at the point of attack to make his plays. And against press coverage, he's just not there yet. I can give him a slight pass because, again, we saw him when he was 19 years old. We didn't see him when he was 20, 21, 22 years old playing it. But it's still a concern. I do think that's something he can really work on and get better at with age, with experience. But again, that 2019 film, he got jammed up on the line a couple of times. Corners were not really scared to get hands on him right away. So in terms of an NFL comparison, this one's going to seem outside the box. But I actually saw a lot of Justin Blackmon in this game. I mean, if you guys don't know who Justin Blackmon in 2012 NFL draft, he was a consensus top 5, top 10 type player in that draft. Ended up going, I believe, 5th overall to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And just a little outlook. I mean, this guy out of Oklahoma State, his 2 years prior to going to the league, had over 1,700 yards in both years and 20 touchdowns in both years. So again, the production's nearly identical. We mentioned nearly 1,800 yards and 20 touchdowns for Ja'Marr Chase. Justin Blackmon was doing something similar. Both big, physical, yards after the catch type receivers that quite simply just make plays. However, they don't necessarily create consistent separation enough to the point where you can call them true, complete alpha receivers from the get-go. And this is no slight on Ja'Marr Chase whatsoever, because I honestly believe if Justin Blackmon had his head on straight, he would have been one of the better receivers in the league for his foreseeable career. I mean, his rookie season, he had 850 yards and 5 touchdowns with the Jaguars, with Blaine Gabbert. So can't say enough. Again, he's my wide receiver 3. I don't have him as the ultimate weapon that a lot of people want to hail him as, but I do think he can be a really good, competent receiver in the NFL, even as early as year 1.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head at the end there. Like he has to go to a place where, for me, he's a wide receiver 2, where he's kind of the second option and is able to, thrive in finding the zones in the defense and be able to, take advantage of that kind of coverage, because that's what he did really well in college. He's not a super great route runner. He doesn't, like you said, he doesn't create separation on his own using his body. Like his routes are just like, the defenders pretty much always know what's going on. They keep up with him, and he just makes a better play, right? Like that's not going to happen in the NFL all the time. He's not going to win all of those battles like he does in college. Like you said, it's an 80-20 right now. And it really is. Like he goes up and he just picks it over top of these defenders, and there's nothing they can do, or he'll cut behind them, and like he'll make a nice adjustment on the ball. And those are all really great traits, but they're not going to work as well in the NFL as they do in college. So that I do have him as my wide receiver 3 as well. I'm fading him just a little bit because of that reason, but I still think he can be a valuable receiver in the NFL. And when I watch him, I kind of see Mike Williams too, like just another big body guy who can go up and win contested balls, but is not really like an alpha wide receiver. Has to be that wide receiver too.
No, definitely. Again, the verticality of his game should translate, but I don't think he's kind of limited in year 1 to what he can do unless he can.
Well, and vertical players like that, like really, like how often do you see them having elite seasons in the NFL? Like how often do you really see a player just get the ball thrown up to them 50 times a season? Like it doesn't happen that much, right? Like NFL teams are better than that. So in college, you can kind of get away with that because sometimes you're going against defenders who aren't able to keep up with your just pure physicality. So I'm a little bit concerned in terms of that, and because he doesn't really reach like the stereotypical high physical profile receiver. We talk about 6'3", 225 pounds, sitting at just 6 foot, 200 pounds. Like I'm just a little bit concerned that he's not going to be able to take that step and use that physicality at the next level.
For sure, I can see that. And in terms of ideal landing spots for him, again, I think this is going to be a top 10 or so pick. Philadelphia Eagles, number 6, make a ton of sense in my opinion. Again, they have that speedier type slot option in Jalen Reagor. You get a ready-made physical boundary receiver. I think that Jamar Chase could play. I mean, I would prefer him to play a Z right away because of his struggles against press, but I do think he can develop into a proper X type receiver on the boundary. So I think that's a good fit for him. Detroit makes a ton of sense. Again, they're expected to lose both Kenny Galladay and Marvin Jones to free agency and don't necessarily have the cap to be able to bring either back. If they don't decide to take a quarterback at number 7, or they don't decide to trade up or trade for Deshaun Watson, I do think at number 7, Jamar Chase makes sense. And the New York Jets make a lot of sense for me too. Again, this isn't a guy I would take at number 2 overall, but say that you trade down, you believe Sam Darnold's the guy, say Carolina wants to move up from 8, you take Jamar Chase at 8, I'm fine with giving Sam Darnold that ready-made boundary type wide receiver to support that offense. Again, you already have Jamison Crowder in the slot to really take some pressure off. I do think that he could be a good fit there.
Yeah, I love it. All right, man. Let's move on to number 2. So this is my 101. I know this is your 101 as well. Devonta Smith from Alabama, 6'1", 175 pounds, which is not a very stereotypical receiver build, and so that has a lot of people concerned. That's why people are fading him a little bit. But 2 seasons where he's eclipsed 1,200 yards. One of those seasons, 2020, he had 1,800 yards, 23 touchdowns, like just won the Heisman, like just an incredible stretch. What do you make of this? Is that like I don't see any flaws in his game personally. Like I watch his film and everything I see is like I actually comped him to Tyreek Hill because even though they're like nowhere similar in terms of height, they're like very similar in terms of what they can do on the field. Like very speedy receivers who can catch the ball anywhere, just has pure hands. That's one of my favorite things about him. Like every time he catches the ball, it just looks so fluid. Like it's just like it's a thing of beauty. And I don't see that there's a way that he doesn't translate to the NFL. If people are fading him, I'm just so happy to go and take that value in the draft.
BMI and breakout age, am I right? Like, no, okay. Let him fall for that reason. I'll just scoop him up at the mid to late portion of my round 1. Now, Devonta Smith is amazing. He is the wide receiver 1 in this class. And I mean, the 2 words that I think of as soon as you mention the name Devonta Smith, nuance and polish. This dude just knows how to play wide receiver at an extremely high level. Like it's unheard of just to see a guy go out on the field, look so natural out of position. But Devonta Smith is that guy. Yeah. Like again,
it's a thing of beauty, man. It's a thing of beauty. Honestly, I love this kid. I can't say enough about him. Like I could honestly just blabber on about him all day. I've been making this sneak peek, guys. I've been making this article breaking down all of these players where I'm pulling film and I'm linking articles to them and basically showing you what's good and what's bad. And I can't find a con for him. I can't find a clip that I'm like, yeah, he did poorly on this play. And so I got to watch, a few more games and see if I can find one of those. Cause it blows my mind.
I got a couple absolutely minor ones. And that, again, you mentioned the frame, not the most physically imposing receiver. I mean, whatever. That's a nitpick. I don't care. Mm-hmm. The second one, the one that I can kind of see, but again, he takes what's blocked up for him really well. It's just, I think at times he'll leave a little bit on the table after the catch. Like, not often, but at times,
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Or like,
but I actually think that that's a smart play in his case because he's aware of his body size. He's aware that he's not built to take these big hits from these big defenders. And so he's taking care of his body to make sure that, he's able to continue to play at that high level.
But again, those little cons, you got extreme effective polish in your route running, create separation with ease and at a routine rate. His hands are basically magnets. Like anything in his vicinity is just sticking to his mitts.
And his arms are freaking
looking like Slender Man out there for real.
Daddy long leg out here.
And a guy who's 6'1", 180 pounds should not be able to have the verticality that he does. I still remember LSU game. I think you know exactly what play I'm talking about, but he probably elevated a good 40 inches off the ground and just snagged it. And he did, like, people are going to say, oh, well, he made one play, big deal. No, he does this routinely.
He had 3 touchdowns that game, man.
It's just, he had 120 yards and 3 touchdowns against Sean Wade in the first half of the national championship game. Like, I don't understand how people are fading him. Like, it just doesn't make logical sense. He's going to get top 5 to 8 type draft capital. He's a ready-made wide receiver 1 to step in right away. And yes, okay, he broke out late, but can we not already contextualize that the Alabama wide receiver room these past 2 years has been one of the best in college football history?
Like, how's he supposed to get on the field when he's got he's got Jerry Jeudy and in front of him?
Calvin Ridley, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, John Mechie, Jalen Waddle, and Devonta Smith were all in the same receiver room in 2000, or Mechie in 2018, but in 2017. Yeah. And then Mechie comes to replace Ridley in 2018, and you got another 5 deep at receiver. Like, no, I don't understand how people can just nitpick on his game like that because he didn't break out. Like, he was the most productive receiver on the team last year. And they had 2 receivers that went in the first round in the first 15 picks. I'll be taking all the value on Devonta Smith and running with it.
Yeah, I love him, man. He's a, I talk about Trevor Lawrence in the quarterback position, being in a tier of his own. And that's how I see Smith. He's up there. Like, he's a tier above the rest. I think he's a true playmaker. I don't care where he goes. I really don't.
Marvin Harrison.
He's going to make plays. I hope it's somewhere good, but
Marvin Harrison's my comp for him.
Oh, I love it.
Smooth, nuanced, ready-made contributor, can step in right away and be a Z on any offense. And again, if he needs to, I do think he can develop into, again, that true X receiver, boundary receiver. But you want to use him as your Z right away, go right ahead. I think he's got 1,200 yards as a rookie if he's in the right situation.
Yep. Well, and my other comp for him was DeAndre Hopkins, actually. Because it's the hands, it's the route running ability. Like, I see a lot of that. Just it's the fluidness that he plays with. I see that in Nook's one of the most fluid players in the NFL. Like, when you watch him, it's just a thing of beauty. And I really find that when I watch Devonta Smith. So I'm excited for his NFL future, man. I'm pumped to take him in rookie drafts anywhere I can, and I hope you are too.
Oh yeah, 100%. Again, a guy that early in his career with the amount of release packages he has off the line of scrimmage just doesn't make sense. Like, we gotta get into
Sorry, go on.
Go ahead. Sorry, I could talk about this guy all day.
One thing I absolutely love too that translates to the NFL is they use him in the screen game all the time, and you see this in the NFL and tunnel screens, wide receiver screens, like tap passes, like whatever team he goes to is going to game plan to use this guy that way because he's just so effective. You get him in space, you get him on the corner. Like, if you get that corner sealed off, it's impossible to stop him. It's at least a 5-yard gain. If not, like, it can go for 80. So I'm like I said, I'm excited for him. I could talk about him all day, so let's move on because otherwise this podcast is going to run forever. This next guy, you mentioned him earlier. You wrote a whole article about him. Jalen Waddle, Alabama, 5'10", 182 pounds. He only played in 6 games in 2020. He broke his ankle in October. But before that, he had 28 receptions, 591 yards, 4 touchdowns in that span. What is it that you love so much about Jalen Waddle? I want you to get into it because I know you wrote this article. So let's hear about it.
As, again, viewers from your podcast can go when they go on to the fantasystockexchange.com, see my full thoughts on him. But, man, this guy's movement ability is just something to marvel at. He's not only is he an elite mover for the collegiate level, but he would be one of the silkiest players by NFL standards on day one. I'm not even just talking about straight line speed because let's be honest, this guy's going to push the high 4.2s, low 4.3s in terms of his 40-yard dash. But that's not even the most impressive part of his movement ability. His agility, his quick twitch muscles are just Tyreek Hill-esque. Now, I'm not, as you're going to hear, I'm not going to compare them to Tyreek Hill, but like they're freakish. And again, people want to just say, "Oh, he's a typical fast guy who didn't break out, yada yada." I want to no. Okay, listen, this guy's extremely underrated when it comes to the verticality and contested catchability of his game. Like, I didn't expect a receiver of a 5'10", 180-pound frame to be able to routinely snag passes out of his frame, large catch radius with such ease. Like, again,
for a little guy, like
Yeah,
he's not a big guy, but I can't even remember which game it was, but I remember he goes up and he just made a beautiful like over the shoulder.
Missouri.
Yeah, that was the Missouri
defenders.
And,
yeah, I had that clip on the guide.
Yeah, I was like, man, that was unreal. That was beautiful. Yeah, routine. So I sorry, go on.
And people want to say, okay, like, you know what, like he gets separation only with his speed. No. Okay, don't get me wrong. He's an elite separator because he can move fast, but he can run routes at a very efficient rate. Like people don't realize he's got a diverse release package off his route. He can set defenders up with ease, understands leverage. He's a smart player with the ball in his hands, knows how to set up the blocks around him, knows how to find space, routinely takes 6-7 yard gains and turns them into 20 just because he knows how to manipulate his movements and his leverage to be able to create more space. Like this is a smart, intelligent player with the ball in his hands. And you can't teach his natural instincts. Now, people are going to say, okay, what about his road tree at Alabama? I understand. Yes, he had a limited road tree at Alabama, but some people might say, oh, yeah, he can't run routes. No, Alabama's scheme itself didn't really allow him to run too many crisp, routine, in-out breaking routes on a dime just like that. Because let's be honest, Alabama this year, first of all, he was playing their slot for the majority of the year when he was actually playing. Second of all, Steve Sarkisian's system revolves so heavy around RPO that basically Jalen Waddle's job was find an open space in the middle of the field behind the linebackers and just settle. Yeah. Just settle.
And he was great at doing that. But he didn't get a whole lot of opportunity when he was out there, right? That speaks to his 28 receptions, but 591, almost 600 yards on just shy of 30 receptions is a pretty phenomenal rate considering how little he got the ball.
120 yards per game in the 5 healthy games that he played. Now, he did come back for the national championship, 3 for 34. Wasn't really fully healthy in that game.
Well, and he looked bad. Like he looked. He just didn't look healthy to, I get he wanted to play, but I'm glad that they kind of pulled him after that and rest him up for his NFL career.
100%. But I mean, I love him. Again, this is a guy like people are going to point out, oh, analytically, he doesn't really meet the par. He doesn't really have the thresholds that a lot of these analytics people want to see, but context matters. And when he was asked to perform this year in those 5 healthy games, again, 120 yards per game, nearly a touchdown per game is fantastic type production you can ask for from your receiver. Again, my comp for him is a guy that actually has been a long-term staple of the Indianapolis Colts, T.Y. Hilton. T.Y. Hilton, I mean, this is a guy explosive with the ball in his hands, creates separation with ease, and it really underrated when it comes to verticality, when it comes to making catches routinely outside of their frames. I think he can step in right away. You may not want him to be your one right away. I do think he can develop into your one, but you plug him in your slot, you can get a ready-made contributor for, let's say, Miami. Tua, you want to get a familiar face down there. You plug him in your slot. You have the 2 physical boundary receivers with Preston Williams and Devontae Parker. I think that would be a perfect fit to get Tua separated.
Well. I love that. I love 100%. That.
Other 2 fits I mentioned here are the New York Giants. Could definitely be a great dynamic type weapon for Daniel Jones. Again, the Los Angeles Chargers, imagine pairing this movement ability with the howitzer that Justin Herbert has on his right arm. I mean, that would be a match made in heaven as well. But
yeah, that would be amazing. One I wanted to throw out there too is I know this is probably unlikely because he probably goes in the first 15 to 20 picks, but I'd love to see him go to Buffalo and kind of get groomed into that Cole Beasley slot role and like, they're gonna game plan to get him the football. It's not, you're not just gonna hit him on the same type of routes that Cole Beasley's on. But I would just love him with Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. Like that offense would just be
the verticality of that offense would be insane because on film, Waddle's routinely breaking 80-yarders like nothing. I mean, keep in mind we're talking about just his receiving production. This guy's been a punt returner throughout his career as well. Yeah. And let me tell you, this guy can fucking get some good yards after the freaking return yards, if you will. I'm not going to say yards after the catch, but
and some of them, like I remember I was watching the game earlier today, and it got called back. So it was a 68-yard return, and that got called back. But it was a beautiful play. I loved it. I hate when I forget what these games are. I'm watching the player. I'm so focused on it. Anyways. But yeah, let's move on to who I have at my number 2. I know you got him at number 4. But kind of the last guy out of the top tier, out of the second tier here between these wide receivers. But it's Rashad Bateman, Minnesota receiver, 6'2", 210 pounds. So profiles as a bigger body receiver. The past 3 years, has been healthy all three years. This season, he had 36 receptions for 472 yards and 2 touchdowns. But in 2019, he had 60 receptions for 1,219 yards and 11 touchdowns. So give me your thoughts. I really love what I see this guy. Obviously, I have him my number 2. I just love his quickness. I think he's a great route runner. He has fantastic hands. He uses his body to create space really well when he's running routes. He's manipulates the defenders. He's a very smart receiver. You talked about that with Jalen Waddle. I find this with Rashad Bateman. Like he's super intelligent in his ability to sit down in zones and know what kind of coverage he's going against. And then he's a great blocker. When he gets the ball in his hands, he's a yak monster. Like, and his breakout age is 18.9, which you can take that for what you will. But, typically players who break out under the age of 19 are bound for success in the NFL. So I'll take that with a grain of salt. And yeah, tell me about it. What do you think?
And this is the biggest misconception that people have between people who watch film and people who study analytics. We look for players who both look good on film and have the analytics to back it up.
Exactly.
People think that there's just a divide in those two communities. Oh, the film community likes a guy who is a good route runner but doesn't have any metrics to support him. That can be the case, but a lot of times, if someone looks good on film, typically they meet those analytic thresholds. And Rashad Bateman is a perfect example of that. I mean, we mentioned nuanced route runner. He has a release package that has many different variations off the line of scrimmage. And when you're mentioning a guy who can get in and out of his breaks, this guy does it clean and concise.
Yeah.
You mentioned the big frame. I mean, he uses his frame to his advantage. He shields off DBs with ease. Soft, plucky type hands that can just snag passes outside of his frame. And underrated physicality. I mean, he can become a team security blanket underneath from day one. And I've mentioned it multiple times, but in my opinion, he's most likely the safest receiver in the draft that is not named Devonta Smith. I do think he can step in right away, probably be a team's number 2 for the most part right away. But I do think in the right situation, he could be a team's 1 right off the bat. And you're talking about teams in the mid-teens. That makes sense. Washington football team could use a compliment to Terry McLaurin. I think that would be a perfect security possession type receiver to complement him. The New England Patriots, you need a boundary receiver to complement what Julian Edelman maybe not is doing in the slot.
We'll see.
I think that makes sense. And you're looking for an Allen Robinson replacement. Chicago Bears, this is your guy. If he makes it to 20, I think that's a slam dunk of a pick. Again, the thing with Bateman, he's so safe. The only real critique I probably have on his game is he's not the most dynamic when in terms of stretching a defense out vertically. He doesn't really have burner type speed, nor is he like a Jamar Chase elite contested catch receiver down the field. But you know what? He does it when he's asked to. He's just not really tasked.
He's a great possession receiver. I mean, really, like that's what he's drafted for, right? Like he's going to be drafted to be that. My call for him was actually, Michael Pittman. Because I see a lot of their game, a similar game between the two of them, similar size as well. But one place that I actually love for him that I wanted to throw out there as well was Oakland, because I think he could really like you mentioned that he's not much of a field stretcher, but they do have field stretchers, and they need that possession receiver, outside of Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller. Right now, Darren Waller's the wide receiver 1 on that team. And it's fantastic, like if you're a Darren Waller owner, but it's eventually you're going to be able to stop it. So, I think that I'd love Rashad Bateman in Oakland. I'd be all about that. I think Derek Carr gets a huge boost. And then the other one, I had was Miami, and then Jacksonville actually as kind of a wide receiver 3, more of a possession guy. And I think that offense would be complete if they had it.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a ton of sense. Again, my comparisons for him, I see a little bit of Keenan Allen to his game. I also see a little bit of Michael Thomas to a game. Good, nuanced route runners that know how to shield the ball away from defenders and be able to really give a good security blanket to your quarterback. And I think Bateman can do that from the get-go.
Yeah, I'm rooting for the guy. Like I really like him. I think he's going to be a value in drafts as well. Like definitely. He's, I have him as my wide receiver too. So if I'm getting him at wide receiver 4, to me, that's a value. So
and yeah, like I have him at wide receiver 4, but the way I view like the 2 to 4 range is whoever I can get the cheapest is the one I want. Yeah, that's how I view it.
That's fair. I mean, they're in that tier, right? Like I do
all fantastic.
Yeah, and I focus on really doing tier-based drafting, right? I don't want to get myself locked into picking this guy over that guy because, like we've said on this podcast already, there's landing spot makes a huge difference here, right? And so if you can't pivot off of a player because of where they go, I think you got to refine your system and recalculate how that's working for you. So this next guy, I know both of us are kind of off of him. We both have him down. You have him at your wide receiver 8 here, and I got him at wide receiver 7. But we're going to talk about him at the wide receiver 5. Rondale Moore, 5'9", 180 pounds out of Purdue. In 2020, only played 3 games. In those 3 games, he had 35 receptions for 270 yards, which is quite a lot in that span. But like when you actually go and watch those games, he had a lot of drops, which. Like I like to treat drops as opportunity waiting to happen. Like drops can be fixed, but it is obviously concerning when you see 3 or 4 drops in the first quarter of a college football game for a guy who's supposed to go in the first round. So what do you think? What is it that pushes you off of more? And
first of all, we'll get into the fact. Yes. A lot of the analytics people, a lot of the fantasy football Twitter community is going to see, oh, you have Rondale Moore at your wide receiver 8, blah, 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 blah. Like, no, okay. Like, let me explain why. First of all, I don't get why he's such an analytics darling. His college yards per reception, guess what percentile it is?
Oh, hit me.
First percentile.
Wow.
Meaning that 99% of players at the position average more yards per reception than what Rondale Moore did throughout his career. Not to mention, people want to mention, breakout age. Okay, yeah, I get it. He's 99th percentile, 18.2 in terms of breakout age. But is there anything that really combats a guy's best year being his first year? Like, I've never really seen that before. I mean, again.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, when you look at 2018, his first year, 13 games, 114 receptions, just shy of 1,300 yards and 12 touchdowns. And then he saw 213 rushing yards as well and 2 touchdowns. So, like, really broke out in that first year. But it almost feels like,
he's played 7 games since
holding
then.
on to that. Yeah, like we're waiting for that to happen again. And I kind of see DJ Moore in his game, in his skill set, but which is funny because
looking at his teammate.
Obviously, they were teammates. They were teammates last year, and I like to call them cousins because they have the same last name. But
oh no, I said I mean it like I'm looking at DJ Moore's teammate as a guy I can kind of see Rondale Moore's role being.
Yeah. Sorry.
I'm looking at Curtis Samuel again. Don't get me wrong, his pros he's very good at. He's an open field nightmare. I mean, once the ball is in his hands and he has open space. I mean, good luck bringing him down, okay? He's explosive playmaker after the catch.
Sure.
The analogy I kind of use when I watch Rondale Moore is he's like the kid on recess that last play before you go in, the ball's going in his hands, and yet you still get scared shitless just thinking of the potential of that play because somehow you're scared that he's going to end up putting it into the end zone. Because that's basically what Rondale Moore is. He's twitched up. He has great movement ability. Underrated in terms of his actual tackle breaking ability, like his contact balance is pretty well for the position. Yeah, like he gives you, and not to mention again, he gives you flexibility as your starting slot and your returner on day one. It's just the problem is the holes in his game right now. He is not by any means a complete receiver. First of all, again, you mentioned it, you prefaced it. He can't catch a cold. His hands are bricks. Like he can't catch a cold to save his life. And you mentioned again, he's going to be very scheme dependent, which kind of impacts his draft capital, in my opinion. Because again, you're limiting your landing spots by being that type of one-dimensional type player that Rondale Moore is. Because quite frankly, if I know I'm one of 5 or 6 teams that can actually utilize you to your skill set, to your proper ceiling, why would I take you high when I know you can just fall? Because a lot of teams are going to be scared off by you, right? So
and then they don't have to force him into their lineup either, right?
Exactly.
Like they don't really, if they didn't spend a lot of draft capital on him, they can give this guy a chance to sit on the bench and wait his turn, basically, right?
100%. Like a system that would, like, again, this team doesn't really need another receiver, but if he were to have landed on a San Francisco 49ers type system, it would make a ton of sense. Basing off of that, I do think his ideal landing spots, New York Jets, make a ton of sense because guess what? Guess who's their new offense coordinator? That's going to be Mike LaFleur. Guess where he came from? San Francisco.
There you go.
Carolina makes a ton of sense. Joe Brady's a smart offensive coordinator that knows how to get the ball into his playmakers' hands, as we've seen by, again, the guy that we compared him to, Curtis Samuel.
Like if Curtis Samuel leaves and Rondale Moore goes there, I mean, first of all, I'll be chapped because I won't ever know if it's DJ Moore or Rondale Moore getting the ball. But secondly, because he's basically going to replicate Curtis Samuel, and we're never going to know when you can start him. Yeah,
exactly. And another one that I liked as well, LA Chargers got the new coaching staff. You got Brandon Staley coming in. He's bringing in Joe Lombardi as his offensive coordinator, experience with the Saints. I do think giving another option, another playmaker to Justin Herbert is an optimal strategy. Again, this is not a guy I do think that the Chargers are going to have to pick in that first round. But talking about I think he's going to go in like the early third, to be quite honest. I think that's how far his draft capital is going to fall. And people aren't ready to accept that because the NFL is going to view this guy. They're going to say, yes, he's dynamic, great at what he does, but he's not the complete receiver. There are a lot of guys underneath him. We're going to mention in a bit, Terrace Marshall, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who I think can step in day one and be more ready-made contributors.
Yeah. They're more complete receivers. Yeah. Like that's the point, right? Is like he's a very twitchy guy. He can make a big play happen and like a very good punt returner. Like he does all those things really well. But as far as like a play-to-play basis go, he's not the best player, in my opinion. He's not even in the top 6, top 7, in my opinion. In that regard. So yeah, man. So you mentioned him. Let's move on to Terrace Marshall Jr., LSU receiver, 6'3", 200 pounds. Profiles as a big body receiver, good route runner, strong hands, good in space. Won't really blow you away with his speed, but again, like he's really good at sitting down in the zones, and he's a smart enough receiver. Hasn't really had any like blow up seasons. In college, he had 7 games in 2020, 48 receptions for 732 yards. Yeah, I mean, it's 7 games. That's
10 touchdowns
100 yards a game. Wow. Like 100 yards a game, 1.3 touchdowns a game. I'm pretty happy with that. And then going back to 2019, he had 12 games where he had 46 receptions and 671 yards and 13 touchdowns. So
third fiddle.
Yeah, I mean, he took a step in terms of like his total yards per catch, right? And he regressed a little bit in terms of touchdown, but that can be volatile from year to year. So I'm not overly concerned about that. What I love to see is the big increase from 2018 to 2019, where he really you can see him take a step statistically, and when you watch the games, like moving from 2018 into 2019, you saw him develop as a wide receiver, and then again in 2020 he looked even more complete. So I do like this guy in terms of like a wide receiver 2. And a guy who can basically come in maybe a wide receiver 3. Like I'd like to see him go to Cincinnati and basically take over that third wide receiver spot behind T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. But yeah, what do you think? Where are you on Terrace Marshall?
So he's currently my wide receiver 5, and I mentioned he's wide receiver 6 here in the consensus because I dropped Rondale Moore down to 8, and everybody after him kind of went up a spot. So it makes sense, wide receiver 5. What I see with Terrace Marshall, again, you kind of hit the nail right on the coffin. I don't think he's going to step in and be a superstar level wide receiver 1 right away. Mm-hmm. But you know what? This is a guy who has a lot of tools, a lot of traits in his bag that you really look for in a contributing top 40-ish type pick. I think he can be. Now you're mentioning he's got a massive frame. I mean, he's 6'3", 200 pounds, and he utilizes it well.
Very well.
Excellent body control, knows how to use and leverage his size to his advantage. And for a guy of that size, I mean, his routes are crisp and concise, which you're not really used to seeing with a guy of, again, that big type stature. And what you're used to seeing, a guy with that big, he's going to have great ball skills. Well, guess what? Terrace Marshall can go up, can get it. Huge catch radius, natural plucky hands. I mean, this is really the true possession type receiver you can get. And what separates him from a lot of the other possession wide receivers we're going to mention later on is he's got good enough verticality. He's got good enough straight line type speed to be able to burn you over the top if you need him to. And that's, again, what separates him from a lot of these other possession type receivers is that he does have that threat. He does have that aspect to his game that he can create separation, which you don't typically see from a guy of his frame. So you mentioned, again, he's polished. He's ready-made. Obviously, again, that frame, he's not going to be the smoothest or most agile player. He's not going to break off a route like a Jalen Waddle because he simply doesn't move that fast in terms of agility, in terms of, or quick, in terms of agility, right? And a little bit of minor drop issues. I think right away, the ideal landing spots, in my opinion, giving the Chiefs a good possession receiver that, quite frankly, Sammy Watkins didn't really live up to.
Yeah, for sure.
Could be ideal for them. Baltimore Ravens, you have obviously a lot of speed on that offense, getting a ready-made possession receiver because, let's be honest, Miles Boykin ain't it. There you go.
I still believe.
And Detroit Lions, too.
Yeah.
My two comps for him, I kind of saw in his game. I saw a good amount of Kenny Britt, a good amount of Devontae Parker in his game. I do think he could be, again, throwing it back on him. And Kenny Britt was a solid, good wide receiver 2-3 for basically the majority of his career. And I do think that's Terrace Marshall's floor, in my opinion, is a Kenny Britt type, which albeit is a very good receiver.
Yeah, I think if you're picking kind of, at the 110 range and if this is like a 1 QB draft and you can get Terrace Marshall there, I think you're probably pretty happy with that. Especially it'll depend on landing spot. My favorite spot's Detroit. Obviously, I got to kind of reevaluate how I'm looking at Detroit. They've got so much going on with the quarterback change as well as head coaching change, a bunch of offensive coordinators. They brought in a new running back coach. Like there's a bunch going on there, and I really got to dive into it and go and do some more research about these coaches to make a real consensus. But I do like him there. I think he can be that possession receiver that they need. And, they've got pretty much all of the targets on their team vacated because everybody's gone in free agency. So
exactly. I mean, they're top 2 receivers. Yeah, for sure.
Cool, man. Well, we just got 3 more, but before we jump into that, I wanted to just represent this Prediction Strike, which is a application or an app that I've been kind of touting for a while, but I've really just kind of latched onto. I love what they're doing there. Prediction Strike is basically, I treat it like real life Dynasty. You get to, you go on there and you can upload real money and then you buy stocks into players. And then based on their fantasy production, their stock goes up or down each week. So it's a lot of fun. I have a few shares in there of different guys that I really believe in. I got in and bought Jalen Hurts right before he became the starter, like 2 weeks before that, when he was literally less than like $1 a share. And now I'm feeling good. So go check it out. Prediction Strike is awesome. You can use promo code TPA to get matched up to $10 on your first deposit. And go check it out. I'd highly recommend it. Ticker down on the bottom there. This next guy is in consensus. I have him all the way down to my wide receiver 9. I'm just not really quite sold on him here, but it's Kadarius Toney out of Florida, 6 foot, 193 pounds. 2020, he had a pretty good season. He had 11 games, 70 receptions, 984 yards, and 10 touchdowns. Basically competing with Kyle Pitts for the wide receiver 1 on that team. Great playmaker when he gets the ball in his hands, great in space. He's very shifty. I actually see him and Jalen Waddle kind of similarly in the way that they move on the field. He's a good route runner and can be used really well in the jet sweep game. But I see him as really like a gadget player. I comp him to kind of Tariq Cohen, to be honest. Like, I think that's the role that he gets used in, is kind of like as a slot halfback type of player where he's on the field like 30 to 40% of the time. And he comes in and kind of gives him a spark. And then you don't see him until third down. What do you think?
So again, my notes here, obviously, again, the production was pretty inconsistent throughout his career. 2020 was fantastic. The 1 year of production, specifically in his senior season, is a little bit concerning because you would have wanted to see more signs as he grew into his role over 2018, 2019. But what he does offer you, he is elite at. I mean, you're talking about separation and route running. He's very good at route running and creates elite separation. I mean, he just, for a guy that moves that way, you wouldn't typically see as much nuance that Tony really brings to the position in terms of his route running. But that nuance, that twitchiness, he's nearly unguardable in press situations. And quite frankly, he presents an excellent release package. And again, you mentioned this guy, when he's in space, his breaks are quick and they're crisp, which is what you look for from your slot receiver, which is basically what the role. You hit it really nail on the head. I do think he's going to be your starting slot receiver for the foreseeable future. I
kind of see Jakeem Grant too. Like that's another comp to me. I think his floor is really low. Like it could be really low. He could be a great receiver in the NFL. I'm not willing to put my chips in that basket because I just. Like we all saw that Senior Bowl video. We saw him beat that defender, like made him look silly, but then he dropped the ball wide open. And we've seen that on film as well. It's not like it's just happening because he's nervous because he's at the Senior Bowl. We've seen him have a case that drops in games, and you do that in the NFL, you don't get on the field. You can't pick up what's pick up. You don't get on the field. And I know he's a wide receiver, but I truly believe like this guy's going to play into the slot. They're going to use him in the backfield a lot. They're going to do a lot of motion with him. Whoever drafts him, like that's how you got to use him because he's so quick and he is so twitchy. Like you got to use those traits that he does really well when he's on the field.
100%. And again, you mentioned the traits. I mentioned the separation, the road running, but when he actually does end up with the ball in his hands, it's a common term analogy or common used analogy, but make you miss in a phone booth. This guy is just so easy.
Good luck.
He literally good luck trying to take him down when he's in space. I mean, he so easily is able to manipulate defenders and just absolutely make them miss. It's pretty insane to watch. And the last time I've seen a guy that is able to make people miss at that type of degree with that type of finesse to his game, I saw a little bit of Dante Hall into him. And I know Dante Hall was never a true wide receiver on offense, but again, this is one of the best returners of all time. I do think, again, Kadarius is probably more polished in the actual receiver aspect of his game, but in terms of movement ability, I mean, Dante Hall is the guy that I think of when I watch Kadarius Toney. Again, my wide receiver 7 because of those movement skills. I understand there's a ton of risk given his profile, given what he represents as a receiver, but man, it's so fun to watch him. I think he's the ultimate complementary receiver to a receiving room. And typically speaking, I mean, this guy may not have the highest fantasy season or fantasy ceiling, but a lot of times I reference this and people don't really understand what I mean by this is someone can be a really good real life receiver,
100%.
Not necessarily be the best fantasy receiver because again, their roles on the offense impact the game so much to the point where they're not necessarily being used as the primary weapon. They're more so being used as, I don't want to say a diversion, but that's kind of what I mean by that.
Like Henry Ruggs is a great example of that, right? Like that's how Oakland used him this year is they would just send him because you have to respect the speed, right? You have to respect what they can do back there. And so, I think that he gets used that way as well. Not necessarily just with like speed, but like I said, in pre-snap motions and, they'll use them. They'll create mismatches when they got linebackers covering them, and he's leaking out to the flats and stuff like that. Because, like you said, he's basically impossible to cover when he gets out into space. And I just think don't overwhelm him. Don't give him too much off the hop, and let him develop. Like this is a player who, to me, is still a little bit unrefined. Like he's still got some work to do. And the good news is like the things that he doesn't do great can be taught. Like that's really important is like he does have the natural ability to be able to make people miss. And like he's a great route runner. Like that's one of the biggest key factors I look for in a college receiver is, are they a really good route runner? Because route running always translates to the NFL, no matter, like how good the defender is. It's hard to defend a guy who you can't keep up with.
Separation.
So, I'm all about it. Let's move on. I think
I'll just mention the 3 fits real quick. Washington football team, dominate that slot. I think Carolina Panthers, you mentioned we're losing Curtis Samuel. Could probably play that type of role for them. And this would just be unfair, but the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean,
yeah, it would be dirty. I've been thinking about the Chiefs on like a couple of these later guys. I'm like, the 31 or 32nd overall pick. Like, go back to back offensive pieces in the first round. That after winning 2 Super Bowls.
That's special.
Yeah, that would be something. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, USC wide receiver, 6'1", 195 pounds. Again, this is one of those guys who's a little bit bigger, but he doesn't profile as a super imposing wide receiver. Again, though, super crisp route runner, good hands, good blocker, gets involved in plays, even when he doesn't have the ball in his hands, which is one of my favorite traits about him. I love watching receivers who are getting down and dirty on run plays and stuff like that. It just shows a drive for the game, and that gets you on the field in the NFL. And then, great acceleration, and he's a good runner and great player when he gets the ball in his hands. So,
I love Amon-Ra. I mean, I think he's a very good, complete wide receiver. I mean, again, I don't necessarily know how high the ceiling is with him, which is kind of why he's not in that top tier. But again, you're looking for a ready-made contributor. I know I've said this a lot today, that you can select on day 2. I think Amon-Ra is your guy. Again, he can refined, crisp routes with a diverse release package. Then you got the strong, consistent hands, polished, ready-made production. And again, when the guy, you mentioned it, you hit the nail right on the head. When the ball isn't in his hands, I mean, he's a solid blocker, and he knows not only to set up routes for himself, but the way he runs his routes, he can create space for his teammates to work underneath of him. That takes a lot of football IQ,
knowledge,
talent, exactly, to be able to understand not only what your responsibility is on the field, but others around you. So I think he's very aware as a player. And again, the only real con I have is he maybe just a jack of all trades, master of none type? Like, does he really have a elite trait? I don't necessarily believe he has an elite trait, but you know who doesn't have an elite trait and is one of the best receivers in the league? My comp for him, it's going to be Adam Thielen. I mean, the way he plays,
Allen Robinson, like that's
good
my
too.
comp,
Yeah.
Right?
Just players that know how to play the position, do everything at a good to exceptional type level. I do think that could be a good fit for him. So again, you're mentioning natural type landing spots for him. Washington football team. I know I've said it a lot for them, but they need a receiver to complement Terry McLaurin. Chicago Bears. You mentioned Allen Robinson's leaving. That's your comp for him. There you go. Plug it in with St. Brown. And finally, I mentioned it with Miles Boykin ain't it, but Baltimore needs a ready-made receiver that's able to contribute right off the bat.
Mm-hmm. And the last one I want to throw out there is my boys here, Green Bay Packers, because I would love him as a compliment to Devontae Adams. That would just be unreal. I think he would be that like ultimate, second possession wide receiver. It would be so difficult to stop that offense. Aaron Rodgers really only needs a guy who can catch the ball. He can get open in space. He's got a good football IQ, and Amonte St. Brown fits that profile. So I would be thrilled as a Packers fan to have that.
That'd be perfect. Perfect. Again, you already have his brother. Why not get the better brother on the team?
Yeah, there you go. Exactly, right? I was thinking about that, man. Then they can cut the other St. Brown.
Yeah, just get rid of his brother because his brother's no good.
Yeah. Freaking Equanimous. Yeah. All right, so this last one, I put him on here because this is this is a guy that I really like, and I wanted to get your thoughts on. And so I've him at number 9, but it's Danny Brown, North Carolina wide receiver, 6'1", 195 pounds. 55 receptions in 2020 with on 11 games for 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns. And then again, he had a great season in 2019 as well, where he went for 51 receptions, 1,034 yards and 12 touchdowns. So, tell me, like, where do you sit on this? I'll tell you how I feel after, but I just want to know how you feel about this guy.
This is just a guy, again, he's just going under the radar, in my opinion. Again, I have him currently as my wide receiver 11. I think what he offers you in terms of being able to stretch the field, being able to create separation, good route runner, solid hands. I mean, I do think he's a good, complete outside receiver for the next level. You mentioned the frame. And I think he can contribute right off the bat. He's going to get higher draft capital than a lot of people think. I think he's probably going to go in the early 3rd round type area. Again, you ask me right now, is there a big difference between taking Rondale Moore or taking a more complete receiver, in my opinion, Diami Brown? I don't really think there is.
Yeah.
So if I'm a team that needs a receiver to be able to produce right away that can play on the outside, I really think Diami Brown offers that type of versatility for you. So again, I know he's your guy here too, but I like him. And wide receiver 11, I know you have him even higher than that. What are your main takeaways from his game?
Well, like I too, I think he's being slept on, man. And I think he's overshadowed because he plays on a team with Jonte Williams, Michael Carter, Daz Newsome, like all these other playmakers who are, like they're making plays. They're scoring touchdowns. They're making big plays down the field. And they really don't have to rely on Diami Brown to be that elite playmaker on their team. So for me, like what I see a lot in his game is actually Hollywood. Like I think he can be that field stretching player. I think he's actually, a more physical receiver than Hollywood. Obviously, he weighs 25 pounds more, bigger frame. He's taller. But like I see that in his game, they play a similar style, very fast, like can beat you and go, very good route runner. But he makes every single catch that you expect him to, right? This guy makes catches at an elite level. He's a great route runner, strong hands. We talked about creating space with some of these previous guys, but he fits that mold 100%, where he's really able to manipulate the defense with his body, and just ultimately a great deep ball receiver. So those are the things I like about him. I do have a couple cons that I'm a little bit worried about it. I just don't think he would excel if he was in a weak offense. Like I think if he went to the Jets, I think it would be, difficult for him to, kind of get anything rolling off the hop, as it is for really anybody to get anything rolling on that offense, at least in 2020. But, I think that would hurt him. I think he needs to go to a team like, I actually really like the Titans. If Corey Davis is gone in free agency and they are able to, kind of fill that wide receiver 2 spot with a field stretching type of guy, because they only need, their one elite wide receiver in AJ Brown. And then if you got a guy who can make plays on the other side, like, and you got to worry about stuff with Derrick Henry, that offense is going to be pretty unstoppable. And then the question that I really have about him is, does this translate to the NFL, or is he just going to be a boom bust wide receiver that, has big games and then, has really low games? And so I do think for him, it's going to be a landing spot situation. If we get, like I said, a bad offense, I'm probably going to be out, because I'm not sold on the talent completely as a pure talent. I think it needs to be in a situation like he was in at North Carolina, where he was kind of this second fiddle and was able to, get that opportunity from that space. So, sorry, what do you think? I'm rambling on now.
Oh, no worries. I just mentioned, I agree. Like if he can be like a tertiary, secondary type option for your offense, he's not necessarily the focal point, but I think he'd strive with having attention, really having him under the radar, if you will. And again, you mentioned Washington makes a ton of sense for him. If they don't go, say they go tackle in the first round, end up with or Mac Jones, for example, and end up waiting till the third round or so for a complimentary receiver, I do think he could fit on the other side of Terry McLaurin. I know I say that a lot, but Terry McLaurin is just one of the top 12 minimum receivers in the league. I do think a lot of people can fit beside him, but like you have a guy with that type of playmaking potential next to Terry McLaurin, who's one of the most ready-made receivers in the league. I do think that'd be a really good fit.
Yeah, man. I love that as well. I think there's, like I said, the Titans, Washington. I'm really curious to see what they're going to do at the quarterback position in Washington, whether they go out and trade for somebody. There's a lot of rumors about Deshaun going around. There was obviously rumors about Stafford. I've heard Andy Dalton. I've heard rumors as far as Jimmy Garoppolo getting traded to Washington, which obviously to me that's a downgrade. I'd rather have Alex Smith for my Terry McLaurin shares. But I like that. So, and you want to move into our last one here?
Go for it. Yeah, as long as it's not Dak Prescott, by the way. As you can see in the back.
Big Dallas fan. Eh? Hey, you're in Hamilton, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're just a Dallas fan or what?
Oh, huge Cowboys fan.
Since
we started watching football.
There you go. Once you start and then you're stuck on it.
Oh,
everybody hates you for it. All right, man. So Tylan Wallace, Oklahoma State, 6 foot, 190 pounds, 10 games in 2020, 59 receptions, just shy of 1,000 yards at 922, and then 6 touchdowns. In 2019, pretty much basically the same stat line, 53 receptions on 9 games, 903 yards and 8 touchdowns. So, like this guy kind of profiles, we talked about Terrace Wallace, like he kind of profiles the same way for me as a guy who he can just kind of do everything good enough. Like he doesn't really excel in any part of the game at an elite level, but he's a smart player. He's a good route runner. He's got good hands. He's not going to blow you away athletically. Like he's not super fast or anything like that, but he can win contested catches. And then the things that I just worry about is making some mental mistakes. Like I watched multiple plays where he either missed the block or ran the wrong play. Like you could tell the ball was, like I watched one, he has a ball's thrown to him and he's blocking and it got picked. The DB is watching the quarterback and he's like trying to block the guy. And I'm like, man, you can't be doing that. So like that kind of stuff in the NFL, that'll get you dropped down the depth chart real quick. So obviously there's that kind of concern. What do you think? Where are you with Tylan Wallace?
I like him. I don't love him. Again, he's my wide receiver 10, but I think he's okay. He's pretty good. Again, you're mentioning the pros with him. Again, I think his body control and his ball skills on the boundary are excellent. Like when the ball's in the air, he's on the boundary. He knows exactly where his body is, where, if you will, he's got the awareness to be able to tap his feet in. He's got the awareness to be able to reach up and get it over a corner. I mean, we saw it. It was evident all through these last few years, to be quite honest. And in general, he's got strong, reliable hands. And you mentioned it. He's got savvy routes. He's a ready-made type Z, in my opinion. Could probably even transition into the slot for the next level and be a really good complementary wide receiver from the get-go. And again, you're mentioning like day 2 type area, 3rd round. I think he could be a really safe contributor for any team that's looking for that wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 type right from the get-go. And you kind of alluded the cons I have with him. Again, I don't think he's a great separator. He doesn't create a ton of separation. I mean, he's got good routes, but typically speaking, once he does create a separation, DBs are able to close fast on him because he doesn't necessarily have those elite
super
movements.
Athletic. Yeah,
exactly. Doesn't really have a crazy amount of yak ability or the desired open field movement skills to really be able to shake and bake or get past someone when he's tasked with it. And he kind of plays like a big frame receiver, even though he's only 5'11", 193, which is pretty weird. Because like you watch this guy, he plays like he's 6'2", like 210, but he's only again 5'11", 193. And I mentioned it a little bit with Amon-Ra a little bit, but he doesn't necessarily have a wow factor to his game. I think he's got a very seamless projection to the next level of being a solid player, but I don't necessarily see him ever really truly becoming a star. My comp for him, a guy that I actually think makes a ton of sense, is Tyler Boyd. I just think he could be a good, solid receiver, probably have a couple 900, 1,000-yard receivers in the right situation with the right volume, but never a guy that you're truly scared of game planning for. But again, you're getting this guy in your rookie drafts, and let's say the mid to late second.
Value for you if he produces like Tyler Boyd.
Exactly.
Yeah, my comp is that. Well, it's funny because Tyler is when Tyler Boyd was coming into the league, this was my comp for him was Cooper Kupp. And I see a lot of Cooper Kupp in Tylan Wallace. Like like you said, plays bigger than he is. Cooper Kupp amazes me when he does that. He looks like a big receiver out there, and like he's 6'1", and he's not a whole lot bigger than Tylan Wallace is, like you said, at 5'1". But I see a lot of similarities in their game in terms of their route running ability, like just smart enough players to sit down in space, and they just do, like, he does a lot of things good enough, pretty well. Yeah. Like I'm not blown away. I'm not blown away by any of his abilities or metrics. He's a complete receiver, but he's not an amazing receiver. I think he's probably, like, his ceiling is probably top 20, and his floor is, he could probably be a consistent like wide receiver 3, right? Like top 36 wide receiver. So, at the back of the first round, at the beginning of the second round, if you need wide receiver help, I think you can take a shot there. I do think, like we talked about this before this episode, but basically after like 5 or 6, depending on where you look at depending on how you look at all these players, like it's a crapshoot. You just you can basically pick and choose. The tiers are almost identical in terms of these players, and where they go is going to make a huge difference. Come April, come draft time. So I'm looking forward to it, man.
For sure. I'll just quickly mention the few spits I think would make sense for him. Detroit Lions. I mean, it's going to be a fit for a lot of us because they need receivers. New York Jets. Again, you got the ability in the slot of Jamison Crowder. You put Talon Wallace at your Z on the other side. I think that could work out really well for you. And New England Patriots. Again, they just need guys that can play the position at this point. Like Demir Bird, isn't it? Like Jacoby Myers had a decent ending to the season, but do you really have too great expectations for him going forward? And then I'm not going to talk about Nick Leary because he doesn't deserve to be talked about. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Yeah, and then I love that. You actually hit both my my landing spots as well that I'd like to see. So, yeah, man. Well, I want to send you off. So we initially were just going to do the one episode with receivers, but I think we've decided now we're going to do a second episode. So we're going to do 10 through 16 on the next one. And yeah, we'll do that. That'll probably be 2 weeks from now, you and I, and then we'll do our full mock draft with Tyler Moss. We'll do that that'll be 3 weeks from now. I don't have the dates in front of me, but I'm pumped for it. I'm excited. I think when we, I'm just planning this right now, guys, but when we do that, wide receiver 10 through 6, we should also just hit the top 4 tight ends, 5 tight ends, because there's only a few guys that are really relevant, relevant that are really even going to be drafted, to be honest. So we'll touch on those, and then when we get into our mock, we can have a full idea of all the players going there.
100%.
Yeah, man. So with that, guys, just one last thing. Make sure you go check out Viridian Global. That's where all of our merch is on. The Point After, you can find all of our True North stuff on there as well as all of our other podcast affiliates, and their whole fantasy football collective is literally insane. They've got like over 50 different fantasy football podcast affiliates on there and whatnot. And honestly, they're the best guys to work with in the industry in terms of, getting merchandise and stuff like that. And I just love what they're doing over there, and I can't speak highly enough of them. So go check them out. Oh, we also just got TPA, the Point After toques, snapbacks, trucker hats, and t-shirts uploaded on Viridian Global. So I'm super excited about that because people can actually buy some stuff for less than $80 now. So it's it should be good to go.
There you
go.
All
right. Thanks, man. I appreciate you coming on. I'm looking forward to next time. See you later.
Should be fun. Take it easy.
Yeah. Bye-bye.